Good morning, church. Happy Thanksgiving. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. I am just back from Oklahoma, where I got to spend time with my own family, sisters and brothers and moms and dads, eating my favorite food, which is definitely mashed potatoes and gravy, and being reminded of our gratitude. I do like that Thanksgiving tradition of going around the table and sharing something that we're grateful for. And for me this year, it has to be IUCC. Believe it or not, I am coming up on my year anniversary here as your administrative pastor. It was this time last year I was returning home and immersing myself in the responsibilities of being the administrative pastor here. And what a roller coaster ride it has been. Thrilling, never boring. Ups and downs, bumps along the way, unexpected turns. And I would, at the end of that ride, immediately circle around and get back in line. Most days I have to pinch myself that I get to do what I get to do, that I get to be of service to this congregation, a place I love with all my heart, and I am tremendously grateful for it, and I wanted to say thank you. Thank you. Give me a moment. Pastor Sarah, as many of you know, I've been in this process of discernment, whether I want to go down this path towards ordination in the UCC. And, I'm glad it's taken a year. There's so many things to consider. Do I have it in me at 52 years old? What does it mean for my love of theater and my love of teaching? One of the smaller things is the thought of having to preach a new sermon every week. I go, I don't know if I have enough things to say. I don't. Limited few convictions that I have. I told that once to Jerry Von Talge, and one of the sweetest, kindest acts, he came in a week later and presented me a list of 100 sermon topics in case I ever got stuck. And Pastor Sarah, early in the spring, gave me this beautiful and profound definition of what a pastor does. Said a pastor's job is to love others and build relationships. And I've just hung on to that. It's so simple. Life is simple when we keep things simple. So the encouragement of both, I'm glad to be up here again. I am. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to speak today. My sermon title is My Favorite Things, a Parable, a Pulpit, and a Place Called IUCC. Now, the favorite things piece came first. I was excited to do those little interviews and ask you what your favorite things are. For me, it was an opportunity to bring your voices and your passions into worship. And then worship chair Jerry Davenport suggested, well, what if we brought in some images? And then it became a collaboration with MYP. What could they do with those images as part of the Advent workshop? The parable, the pulpit, and the place called IUC may not be more than just clever alliteration at the end of the day. But I promise I'm going to weave some disparate threads together and find my way back to the favorite things. But we are going to take the scenic route. We are. The very scenic route today. Today's scripture, again, is the parable of the tax collector and the Pharisee. Now, if you remember when I preached on the parable of the pearl of great price, I guess I'm developing my first series. Maybe one more, I'll have a series. If you remember, parables are meant to challenge us. They're meant to take us outside our comfort zone. There's always a quality of the unexpected in them. But so often it's the case when we hear them today, we don't miss that shock and awe because we can't listen with first century ears. Thus, we sort of tend towards the easy and most simplistic interpretation. So along those lines, we might at first think, oh, I don't want to be like that Pharisee, that hypocritical Pharisee. I'm going to identify and sympathize with the tax collector, the repentant tax collector. Good guy, bad guy. Amy Jill Levine, Jewish scholar who was here once at IUCC and whose book on the parables I'm relying on heavily today, she says, the sinner turns out to be a saint and the saint turns out to be satanic. Easy definition. No challenge there. Nobody is sitting in their seat right now feeling uncomfortable. Now, if we dig into the text, we do some exegesis, we do some historical investigation, things get far more interesting. Now, the Pharisees we've come to know, I think, as those hypocritical religious authorities who loved the trappings of office and played a part in the death of Jesus. But for a first century audience, Pharisees would have been respected religious leaders. They were out among the people, making the Torah accessible to the audience of the day, to the people of the day. They were known to walk the walk and talk the talk. Some call them the first proto-rabbis, and this particular Pharisee is a little bit of a superstar, offering prayers of thanksgiving and praying and fasting well beyond what was required by the law. Our tax collector, on the other hand, again, I think we tend to think of as a marginalized group. Jesus was hanging out with the outcast, the destitute, the marginalized tax collectors. But a tax collector for a first century audience is a very unsavory individual, immediately suspect of corruption, not at all marginalized. They use their power to abuse others, to act without mercy. To give it a much modern sort of update, it's like this. Two people came down to the temple to pray, one Mother Teresa, the other George Santos. Now you're listening, now you see the reaction. Now I promise, I am not being political. I am not being political. I thought long and hard about who to pick. Now, believe it or not, that's not the most shocking part of the parable. The shocking part of the parable is that one was justified alongside the other. Now we have to dig into the Greek, into the Koine Greek, and it comes down to this preposition para. Now, para can be translated, and is most often translated, and legitimately translated as rather than. This one was justified rather than that one. You're in, you're out. Now, Amy Jill Levine, though, and other scholars say it can also be translated alongside of, because of. Now here I like this because of the challenge. Let me use her words. That pesky Greek preposition, para, as in paradox, parallel, paraclete, and parable, can mean rather than, but it can also mean because of. Another meaning, and the one most familiar from the use of the prefix in English, is to set side by side. Its primary connotation is not one of antagonism, rather than, but one of juxtaposition. Next to. The parable should conclude, this man went down to his home justified alongside the other, or even because of the other. Now, to whom is this parable being addressed? Those believing in themselves as righteous and despising others. This is to the people gathered in the temple, those gathered this morning, those believing in themselves as righteous and despising others. Can we find ourselves there? There's nothing to suggest that confidence in oneself, take pride in one's work is necessarily a bad thing. Feels good at times to do charitable works, fulfilling spiritually and emotionally. Did we not, the leadership team here at IUCC, proudly proclaim at the start of stewardship that all the leaders had gotten their pledges in? It felt good to do those shout-outs and create those Christ Among Us videos, and it felt good to be recognized as a Christ Among Us. Thank you, Dr. Dwayne. Now, what about the despising of others? Do we go there? It's been a year. I've earned my certificate in sausage making. I've been in the trenches working behind enemy lines. I've got a seat next to the Great Oz behind the curtain of the Emerald City. Whatever euphemism you want to use, I have seen it all, the good and the bad, our triumphs, our tragedies, our beauty, our blemishes. I've seen people refusing to work alongside others for sake of personalities. I've seen angry resignations, both public and private. I fielded complaints about the idleness, the acrimony, the sanctimoniousness of others. I've seen aspersions cast and gossip levied. Talked with members who feel abandoned or neglected. I've heard the voices decrying a loss of IUCC identity in its post-pandemic world. We're getting too gay and children shouldn't be around drag queens. Or we're not gay enough and drag queens need us more than ever. Speaking more broadly, we proclaim every single Sunday that we are extravagant welcome where it doesn't matter where you may be on your religious journey. Does that include the Republican? Does that include the unvaccinated? Could progressive Christianity ever make room for someone that might be pro-life? What's this parable trying to say? Now, Amy Jill Levine gives it a modern update by contextualizing it into a middle school group project. I have taken that and updated into my own Theater 100 class, Introduction to Theater. Every semester, I assign a midterm project where I put them in groups of 5 to 6 people, and they have to work collaboratively to produce a 10-minute play. They have to function as actors and directors and designers and stage managers, and most of the time I just marvel at what they create. But every once in a while, there'll be a group that goes awry. The majority of the people in the group will do all the work, driving force, creatively speaking, managing all the props, doing all of it, and there'll be 1 or 2 that don't participate. They don't show up for rehearsal. They don't give an equal share. But at the end of the day, they all get the same grade. And sometimes those in the majority will get angry, and they'll get bitter, and they'll get resentful, and they'll say, it's not fair. We did all the work. This person didn't contribute anything. They should not get the same grade. And in that anger and in that bitterness and in that resentment, they close themselves off to the possibility that that person may have given all that they could give. That they may be caught in life circumstances right now that prevented them from participating. That they might leave with a sense of what collaboration is. They might leave and have a little tiny taste and an appreciation of theater that they didn't have before they had begun. We've arrived at my destination. So many things to be grateful for this season. My favorite things. My dear, dear friend Jerry Von Talgy, who unabashedly has the Mercedes of all scooters, will drive it down the center aisle of the sanctuary. My dear friend Pat Sauter, who gave me a delicious scolding when I didn't put the tablecloths back. I stuffed them down in there lazily in Plummer Hall, and she let me have a scolding for it. the incomparable Lorraine Fox and her group out on the patio before Sunday school. My dear friend Donnie in the back, who argues with me every single Sunday about what are the right batteries to go in the pastor's microphone. My dear friend Alex Engel and his emails that he sends me discussing in detail the minutia of fountain maintenance. My dear friend and social gadfly, Bill Allenbach, who never stops arguing for progressive Christianity, never failing to let us know that we could be doing more. My friend, my colleague, my mentor, Pastor Sarah, who in the most beautiful, anxious vulnerability, a side that so few of you get to see, dodging the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, perseveres to realize a legacy she was born into and out of, knows IUCC better than any of us. Everyone that follows the bylaws and those that circumvent them. Everyone that wants one service, everyone that wants two. Everyone that's logged on to Breeze and everybody that's frustrated with it. The extroverts, the introverts, the old-timers, the newcomers, the active and inactive. These are my favorite things. In closing, God is bigger than all of us. Love can heal any division. You are your brother's keeper. You are your sister's keeper. We're in one big group project called IUCC, tasked with telling the story of Jesus. Whether you're being carried or carrying along someone else alongside you or because of you, all of us are justified. That is my Thanksgiving message this morning. Amen.